Okay, so I'd like to welcome everybody to the April presentation. We're introducing Nadya Dutchin, who is our new executive director for the American Humanist Association. She joins us after 10 years of community engagement, strategic partnership, and youth program development, multi-method fundraising, and change management experience. Previously, she was the co-executive director of Power Shift Network, a Washington, D.C. based climate justice organization where she led the communications and fundraising programs. While there, she emphasized that the climate crisis cannot be addressed without directly linking the impact of environmental racism on people, and worked to center Black, Indigenous, and people of color youth within the climate justice movement. Prior to that, she spent 7 years at Be the Match Registry, where she first worked as a community engagement representative and then as the national account executive, where she provided coaching and mentoring to the community engagement representatives and leveraged many public speaking opportunities to create awareness about the need for more bone marrow donors of color. While at Be It Match, she cultivated strategic partnerships, fundraised and managed national patient-focused campaigns, and created the largest college recruitment program called Be the Match on Campus. She currently serves as the board president of the Common Good Generation and is the vice president, currently interim president of Our Climate. Nadya is Afro-Indo Guyanese, did I pronounce that right?
Correct.
Okay, heritage and a proud alumna of Florida A&M University, where she studied molecular and cellular biology. I'll throw in the last part that's on her bio. She loves the Muppets, reading fiction, supporting local restaurants, visiting museums, the thrill of live music, and most of all, watching movies and cuddling with her daughter. On a personal note, I will put in that the AHA board did a very extensive search for a new executive director, and we were delighted when Nadia's name came forward. We think that she's an extremely perfect match for the AHA, and I think we're all going to be very interested today in hearing what she plans on the direction she's planning on taking the AHA.
Thank you so much, Howard. I really appreciate it. And good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. As Howard and Scott both said, my name is Nadia, and I do use she, her pronouns. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I live right near the Johns Hopkins Medical Campus. I will apologize ahead of time because you will inevitably see my daughter at some point in time because she will interrupt us, and her father will be coming to get her shortly. So I will need to excuse myself at some point during this conversation to walk her to the door and give her a squeeze and then come back. So I apologize for the interruption ahead of time. And here she comes. Okay, good. So everyone's waiting. So I am thrilled to be here tonight, and I'm thrilled to be here with the AHA in general. I joined on December 1st of last year, and it has been like drinking water from a fire hose since then. And I think things have slowed down quite a bit, but it's been really interesting talking with everyone. I think the greatest joy that I've had thus far is getting to know members, chapter members, general members, and then our past luminaries, I guess, if you will, our past presidents and board members and other movement elders within the humanist movement, and particularly as they relate to the AHA. So I've heard lots and lots of history about the AHA, and it's been really interesting. Also really beautiful hearing about all of the struggles and how folks have, excuse you, you're making too much noise, sorry. Hearing about all of the interesting things that have happened in all of the decades, and that the AHA has existed, and how the AHA has been at the vanguard of many social justice movements, most civil rights actions throughout its history. I've been trying to figure out where there was a disconnect to some degree. from the level of activism that was prevalent beforehand. And please know that I understand present company excluded, as well as the many other chapters that are that are busy and active. But there's been a real disconnect, because I will say that because I've been a part of many working with youth activists for many years, both with PowerShift Network as an employee and as a board member, working in sustainability with Groundswell, which was another nonprofit, sustainability nonprofit in DC, and then working with Be the Match, which caused me to work with a lot of nonprofit partners. And for me to have been around all of those people and have never really bumped into the AHA anywhere, says that there has not been a lot of action, particularly as it relates to young people. I know that there's a lot of action, but not particularly as it relates to young people. So, coming to the AHA and having all of that experience, I think will be really, really useful as we look forward to engaging with a younger demographic and welcoming them into this movement. As you know, many of our youngest neighbors, friends and neighbors, are religiously unaffiliated, and people have taken to calling them the nuns, which I think is kind of negative. But nonetheless, the religiously unaffiliated. And what I know about them and their Safia, please stop interrupting. Thank you. Sorry. Welcome to my life. What I've always found to be really interesting is that to me, in my opinion, their religion is social activism. It is action. It is justice. It is defending civil rights of everyone, and really gauging how responsive people are to the needs for folks to find fairness and justice in this world. And I think they have a really interesting perspective. I tell people all the time that, those of us that are a little bit older, and even those that are a little bit older than I am, we're all going to have to be prepared to get really uncomfortable in order for everyone to find some level of comfort. And young people are already terribly uncomfortable, and they're willing to get more uncomfortable in order to bring about a more just society. And so, like, as we think about bringing in more young people and the youth, the youthful generation, Gen Y, which are millennials, Gen Z, we're going to have to structurally change the way that the AHA operates and the way that our chapters operate with and relate to one another. We're going to have to create a place that is actually more welcoming to people from diverse backgrounds. Inherently, that generation is just diverse. They're racially diverse. They've got diversity of sexual and gender identities, and very really, really diverse thought, also socioeconomically diverse. They're a really, really interesting demographic. Speaking from like a marketing perspective, I'll kind of retract and go back to that. They're a really interesting group of folks. But we really and truly only have one time to get it right. We only have one time to interact with them and get it right. Otherwise, they're going to walk away from the AHA. They're going to walk away from humanism. And I think we have something really, really beautiful to offer them. The beauty of the AHA and the beauty of humanism, broadly speaking, is that it's really, really flexible, fluid, and open, and it's welcoming to anyone who really believes that life is precious, and that human life is precious, and that people are inherently, deserving of dignity and respect. And there are very few movements, and there are very few places that offer that kind of openness and the freedom to define yourself within itself. Howard and I were talking just yesterday, actually, and I think most of us in the room are probably atheists and agnostics. And one of the people that I spoke with, one of the former presidents of the AHA, did remind me, we don't want to define ourselves by what we're not. We want to talk about what we are. And what we are is, really, really nice and good and decent people who want to be better each and every day, and we want to make things better for the people around us, whether we know them or not. We want things to be fair, and we want justice, and equal access to justice, and many social benefits, um, and our basic civil rights. We want equal access to that. Um, so inherently, we have the moral high ground as a movement, in many situations. So I think what needs to happen in this moment is that we need to get our feet shuffling. We need to get moving again. We need to become more and more active in the community. And I think that really starts with the AHA central office. And so know that I'm not putting that burden on chapters or on members. It really rests on us, on AHA central office, to create more cohesiveness and more support for our chapters and our members, and our affiliates. So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing right now. I've begun by settling in my staff, working with them to get to know them, and get to know what they do and what they really love about their jobs, what they don't like about their jobs, and what we could do better in their opinion. I really believe in collaborative leadership, and I mean collaborative, not just with AHA staff, but I mean with everyone. I'm very, very interested in getting input from anyone, any and everyone who has, a solution to a problem. I don't want, anyone to, reach out to me and complain about a thing without bringing a solution to fix the thing. I really, really want folks to feel open, as if my door is open, which it is, and my email box is open. But feel free to, contact me with, hey, this is a challenge we've had, and this is what I think could be helpful to solving this challenge. Or here's a really cool thing that we did that was successful. Please share this with other people. So with our staff, we've begun collaborating to figure out how we're going to do our work. And I think the AHA traditionally has done a lot of things at the same time, which has caused some inefficiencies. What I and our staff are working on right now is determining what we want to do. So we're picking 2 or 3 things that we can do in the next year and do them really, really well. And then in subsequent years, we build on those things. We're going to go back to doing full-on proper national campaigns where we are providing social media support, where we're providing material support. I'm not going to speak to you again. Sit down somewhere. Excuse me. Sorry, y'all. Where we provide full support for national campaigns. So we will talk about the ideas. We will, bring on additional partners if necessary, and provide you with, very, very substantial support. So this will be the length of the campaign. It will be from date X to date Y. We may split things out into regions because I think that's really powerful for, folks to do work regionally. But one of the things that I think will be helpful as we do national campaigns and we, provide more direction and more leadership with those campaigns is bringing everyone into brand standards. I think, it's like to use a really bad example, it's like the Wild West out here. Everyone has like their own branding and their own thing happening, and there's no cohesiveness. There's nothing that, ties Prairie State Humanists to the Florida Humanist Association. And there should be, because we're one unit. You are all representatives, chapters, and affiliates of the AHA. So some of the support that we can provide is material support that ties us all together. There is no reason we as AHA Central Office should not be providing a tablecloth, at least, to everyone that says, the Prairie State Humanist chapter of the American Humanist Association. Everyone should have something that ties them to us and us to you and us to one another. There is no more powerful brand ambassador than you. You all are out here doing amazing work. You're holding these wonderful forums. I was here when you had Lee McIntyre talking about how to what was it? Something with science deniers. How to
talk to a science denier.
Thank you. Talk with that. My knee-jerk reaction is argue with, but I'm like, that's not what Lee said. That's not productive. So yes, how to talk to a science denier. So like those are really critical pieces. We can't let our brains, turn into mush either. We should have these forums where we are talking about interesting topics and we're generating excitement about science and new economic theories and all kinds of interesting things. We should be thinking about what the future looks like and imagining that and figuring out how we can partner and work together to be generative and towards those ends. But in the meantime, we need to get our feet moving, and we need to get them moving in the same direction. And that was probably the one thing that was a little bit, quite a bit dismayed by when I first started. I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's everywhere, everyone's willy-nilly, and so getting everyone to face in the right direction, the same direction together, would be really, really helpful. And so we have started a communications audit within the AHA. We brought on a consultant who is, in my opinion, a marketing genius. She is going to help us think about our marketing materials and the systems that we're using and the trainings that we should be creating to help you all function better. I think it would be useful to help our chapters, know what do you do with the 501c3 that AHA has that identifies some chapters. That's not the case for your chapter, but many chapters have our 501c3. How do you operate with that? How do you start a bank account? How do you fundraise? Do you know how to grant write? We should be helping you with that. We should be helping you think about peer-to-peer fundraising. We should help you think about in-kind donations and really innovative ways of getting and keeping volunteers. There are many, many points of training that we can be generating for our chapters and our members, and we are working on identifying what those are and how we should do that. The consultant is going to be reaching out to chapters and members to host some listening sessions in the next couple of months. So please look out when you see that email come across, please respond, because we want to hear from all of you. We want to hear from the chapter, and we want to hear from you all as individual participants and members, because we cannot create materials and support for you if we don't know what those things are. And regardless of how insignificant you think your contribution might be to that conversation, please come and join it. It's funny how we get gems from like the one-off uttering and it turns out to be like a genius idea. So please, don't talk yourself out of coming to one of those listening sessions when they're being held. I really do look forward to hearing from all of you. But one of the funny things when I started, when I was interviewing, as a matter of fact, and I think Howard might remember this or not through some of my interviews, the recruiter was like, you need to learn the language of humanism and you need to learn the language of the AHA. And I read it and it's really, really beautiful and it's really touching and it touched my heart. I don't think I identified as a humanist before I applied for this job. I think I knew what it was. I'd heard like a radio announcement. I was like, oh, that's me, I do that. But I thought it was like the Unitarian Universalists. I was like, oh, that's the UU church, that's what they do. And I just assumed it was a commercial for them. Who knew? I didn't know until I actually looked through the materials and looked through the website, and I was like, oh, that's me. And that is exactly how I raised my daughter. I've said our motto to her over and over again, even though she's 7 and believes in unicorns and other fairy tale figures we shall just be nice about. But that's the way that I raise my child, and it's the way that I live each and every day. The language of humanism and the language that the AHA has on its website is really lovely, but it will not resonate with young people. Young people speak in a very, very pointed fashion. And I think what's important is they want to see and hear action. What are we doing with our humanism? How are we living it each and every day? And my goal as the new executive director is to help each and every one of us live it more visibly, more loudly, and in like bright, vivid color. I want everyone to see us because we're really, really good people and we're doing really, really good work, and we want the world to be a better place for everyone. And I know that to be true. I think there are some folks that I've talked with some folks that were, that have expressed their dismay over social justice. And I don't think people realize social justice it's literally just social justice equals civil rights. The same things that everyone has been fighting for since the Constitution. various folks grappling for different aspects of civil rights or the same access to all of the civil rights. That's what social justice is, and it's been interesting hearing people talk about like that certain entities are becoming too woke, and I've heard this from humanists, which has been equally disturbing. It's too woke, and it's too far left, and I don't understand it, and it's perfectly fine. I think there are a lot of things that the young folks say that I don't understand either, and I've had to ask people, and it's okay to ask questions. I think it's important for us to be able to create places where folks can ask questions, difficult questions, embarrassing questions, without any judgment, and just look to get to an answer, and that's okay. But like I said, it's been really dismaying hearing people just rail at the social justice aspect that we're leaning into. But I don't know anybody in our movement that does not want folks to have more access to reproductive health, or access to equal and good access to unbiased healthcare, for example. We should be thinking more about disability justice. We should be thinking more about food and water justice, land rights and sovereignty. We should be talking about reparations. There are a lot of topics that we should be having conversations about, and that the humanist movement and that the AHA should be pushing, again, at the vanguard of things. We should be pushing many, many issues. And we are working with our legal staff and our policy staff to revisit some of the positions, not revamp them, but revisit them so that we can push harder on some of those things in the future. I will stop because I prefer to have conversations. And I'm sure I'll think of something, somebody will ask a question or make a statement, and it will remind me of something that I meant to say. But if anyone has any questions or any statements or anything they'd like to share, I'd like to just kind of stop and give you an opportunity to say something, and because I really prefer to dialogue more so than talking at people. It's not the way that I do things.
Same here.
Thank you.
Nadia, what kind of relationship, or where do you see the affiliates going in the future? And you might want to explain what some of those programs are for some of our folks.
Clarify your question, Howard.
The alliances, I should say.
Oh, thank you. I was like, what are you talking about?
Sorry. Right idea, wrong word choice.
Just like, wait a minute. So the Social Justice Alliances, as you all probably do know, there were 4 alliances last year, or in previous years. Let me just say that I can only speak to what I know as of December 1 of 2021, and I'm trying to learn as much recent history as possible. So we had a Black Humanist Alliance, Latina Human Alliance, LGBTQ Human Alliance, and Humanist Alliance, and the Feminist Humanist Alliance. So there were 4. And unfortunately, I can't right now, baby. Last year during the executive director search, so when they were looking for me, there was a bit of a schism. And the Feminist and LGBTQ Humanist Alliances dropped off. They disbanded, and many of the other members of the remaining 2 Humanist Alliances, again, Black and Latina, disbanded to a large degree. And there were still a couple of people who were active. When I came on board, I got the full download of what happened, and I was, disappointed in how things were handled and what happened. But I also was okay with the fact that I feel like having all of those volunteers doing all of that work for free, it's extractive. People who are already working jobs are volunteering like heavily on behalf of the AHA, giving a lot of work, and there was no compensation for them for that. I don't like that at all. I don't believe in having anybody work for free. It doesn't matter who you are, but particularly when you're talking about marginalized populations, we should not be asking any of those folks in particular who are fighting against social oppression. We should not be asking them to work for free, particularly not to the degree that they were working. I also felt like the work was, and this is not to, not to say a single negative thing about the staff member that was working with them, but they were working with a coordinator. Decisions are not made at the coordinator level, they're made at the executive level. So with my permission, we disbanded all of the alliances this year because it makes more sense to me to have key people from each of those communities and other communities that I think are important if we're going to, as we're building programming and outreach to younger populations and BIPOC populations, to have them in an advisory capacity. So I'm going to be working to, I'm nearly complete with convening an executive advisory council of people who would advise me, and they will advise me and our AHA leadership, so our directors, to ensure that we are able to engage with communities, that we know what's happening and we can have a finger on the pulse of activities in certain communities, and we can build partnerships with them, and in ways that are not extractive, like paid partnerships. But having those representatives from these different communities actually advising us where we make decisions, so that their advice and their recommendations land in a place where we can actually take action, and not in a place where, it's like, here's what we're doing, let everyone else know. It is more, this is what you should be doing, and AHA takes the lead and we do the thing with their advice. And I think it's a better way for us to proceed forward, to take them as experts, as they are, and have them advise us in a consultative fashion. Those positions will be compensated. They will receive a monthly stipend for helping. And I am fully excited about convening probably this summer. I'm thinking maybe June or July, maybe after the annual conference, which is the last weekend in July, everyone. Or I'm sorry, the last weekend in June. After that, we should be ready to convene the Executive Advisory Council, as we are thinking about ways to engage with younger folks and more Black and Brown folks, and creating structural changes so that we can welcome them into the humanist community, in particular the AHA community and our chapters. Did that answer your question, Howard?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anyone
would you like to tell? I'm sorry.
I was just asking if there's anyone else. I mean, you can keep asking questions, Howard.
I was going to ask if you wanted to talk a little bit about the since you mentioned it, the upcoming conference.
Oh, we just started planning. I have nothing to contribute there. Honestly, we just started talking about it. So we know the weekend. It's going to be the last weekend in June, the last Saturday in June. We're working adjacent to the conference will be our lobby day, which is interesting. We're actually partnering with American Atheists on our lobby day. So we're going to be doing some of that work together, which is really actually quite exciting. And I think our issue is every child should have a family. So working with, policy around the foster care system and adoption system here in the United States, ensuring that every child who needs a family can have one. And we think that that's going to resonate really well with our community. I think, we're looking to have around 100 people join us. So if you or someone that you know particularly has been touched by the adoption or foster care system, we would love to have you all participate in that. And it may very well, it's abutting the conference by a couple of days. Well, we may push it out a couple of weeks. We're not sure. We're in talks of doing that right now. But we're really excited about the annual meeting. It will be virtual. Unfortunately, we're not ready to do something in person. We know next year will be in person, barring another bout of COVID variations. But this year will be virtual again. So we are looking for folks to host workshops. So if you would like to throw in a proposal, please do. Our RFP is open for subject matter. That's as far as we got, which is not very far.
Hey, let's open it up. Does anybody have any questions?
So, just a general question. I love what you've said about being more active, and I particularly love the idea of having a more cohesive community of humanists across the various chapters in the national organization. That's something that I've been hoping to see for years.
Mhm.
Um, so that's just a comment. My question is, in this sort of post-truth era,
Mhm.
um, we see all of this institutionalized bigotry and oppression happening with women's rights and voter rights and implicit, if not explicit, racism and classism and whatnot. Um, I know, and you and I may have talked about this a little bit in a private conversation, but I know that the AHA has been really active in the separation of church and state, with lobbying and legal interventions and whatnot. So my question is, what role do you think will be unique in the current era of the many challenges we face as a secular, rational, scientific, inclusive community? What
Mhm.
what way will the American Humanist Association be able to approach some of those challenges that are different than, say, the American Atheists or the Freedom from Religion Foundation? What will
Mhm.
distinguish what we can do?
There are a couple of things. One is because we are humanists, we can build with diverse coalitions. And more people will probably work with us because we are not overtly American Atheists and Freedom from Religion Foundation. So we have the latitude to work with religious humanists and other religious minorities who have more in common with us than they have difference. So right in this moment, we know that white Christian nationalism is probably one of the biggest threats that we face as a society. It is pervasive, and they're in every institution, and they're a fan of every kind of oppression. So we have allies who are religious minorities, and we are more apt to work with them, and they're more apt to work with us because we are humanists. Um, and those are, I deeply believe in partnerships, in the strength of partnerships. It is one of the strengths that I have because I just love doing it. I love finding common ground with people. Um, and so that is probably one of the things, one of the advantages that we have is that we are who we are. And we we have traditionally been at the forefront of social justice and of civil rights movements. So we have, like, if you will, allow this terrible phraseology, but we have like the street cred, if you will, of having a deep history of doing this work, regardless of whether or not you're a religious person or you're a secular person. If you are a person that believes in freedom, of real freedom, freedom from religion, freedom, to live your life in a manner that does not harm people, where everyone has equal access, then this is a movement for you. And so that is what we have more so than other folks. American Atheists, I will, to their credit, I will say they are very, very socially active. And we're finding a lot of common ground with them. So I think there's an opportunity as we build our own coalitions on, on our side with our, our religious humanists and other religious minorities. We will find a friend in American Atheists in partnership with them also, thereby, like sewing together the secular movement to some degree, in interesting ways, I think. I think the leaning into the good, good without a God is the reason that we do the things that we do. Without a God is the reason we do it. But I want us to really lean into good and have lots of people join us who believe in the good too, and want to fight that good fight with us. So again, we have the moral high ground and moral impetus um, to partner with as many people who can benefit and who can contribute to the protections that we're seeking to, we're seeking to guard with our, like put our bodies in between white Christian nationalists and all of the other, oppressive crusaders that there are out there. We can put ourselves between them and other people who don't have a voice. I
Right.
saw Stephanie. I saw a hand.
Yeah.
You may not. You may not.
Kitty's near the front door.
Okay,
We saw
Sophia.
the Easter bunny.
Okay, honey. Thank you for the Easter bunny.
I'd love to see her, by the way.
Oh, she'll join us in a moment. Please go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay. Well, having been active in the Feminist Caucus, which is what the Feminist Alliance was called before that, and continuing on, the humanists have been really helpful with women's rights issues, particularly with reproductive rights. And they're not just women's issues, by the way, they're everybody's issues. And also ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment, which still is not done. And so
Right.
you said that you and the staff were going to be trying to focus on a few priorities. And I would like to nominate those each as priorities that we should continue with. There's been so much backsliding in the general population in regard to rights to control our own bodies and for women to have healthy abortions.
Yep.
And so forth. That it's really important to get out of our specialty silo of separation of church and state and continue to work in these other areas.
I absolutely agree with you. And what's interesting is we were in the, I can't spell today. I'm sorry, I'm taking notes while we're talking. Okay, we were in the Secular Coalition for America meeting a couple of weeks ago. So it was, they call it the heads meeting, which is like a weird name for the meeting, but it's the heads of all of the secular organizations. And I think what was interesting is hearing our lawyers, all of the lawyers did a panel. The lobbyists did a panel and then the lawyers did a panel. And what I thought was interesting was hearing the lawyers say, we're going to end up losing more than we're winning. For a couple of reasons. One is that, we are, not necessarily exhausting this, separation of church and state argument, but we have a more conservative Supreme Court, and we're just going to end up losing more than we're winning, and we need to change our tactic. And what was interesting is there was a professor from Georgetown who came behind them and said, yeah, we probably need to lean into the 14th Amendment, which is equal protection under the law. Because we're not, and that you're absolutely right. We are failing to protect people. And this is a basic tenet of, the Constitution. That's why the Constitution exists. That's why the Bill of Rights exists, is to protect people. And we are falling down on our jobs. And that is a part of what we need to do. Sneakily, I realize that this is going to be published online, but I agree with you. I'm hoping that our selections for the year, my favorites, if we have a vote, is reproductive justice. Is certainly one of them. I know that we need to lean into climate and environmental justice because goodness knows we can't wait on that one. And then disability justice, which I think is really almost in almost a sense, it's almost part and parcel of reproductive justice, because there's so many unseen disabilities that come with reproductive justice. I think they're kind of interlocked in a sense. And I think ratifying the ERA I think in my entire lifetime, it has boggled my mind why that has never happened. I've always, every time I see a documentary about it, I'm like, and this hasn't passed, why? This is not ratified, why? It's just mind-boggling. It's so incredibly disappointing on so many levels that it has not happened. I know that there are some other issues that we've talked about, like having some really open discussions about our justice system that is not at all just, and the state of our prisons and the people, the human beings that are living in these disgraceful institutions, many for nonviolent offenses, and the horrifying way that we treat them and their families, because clearly they're not the only people who are suffering. They're parents and spouses and partners and friends and children and community members who are missing them also and are suffering deeply because of their absence. In many cases, rehab is what could fix a thing. Having access to good, solid, safe housing is another issue.
Jobs.
Yeah, and jobs, exactly. I mean, I think that when we look at America, I will speak for our country because it's not like we're doing so much worse than other people in so many areas, and better than others clearly. And not to throw the entire country under the bus, but we have got so many systemic injustices, and unfortunately, like, our framers were not great, and they were problematic people themselves. My family were 3/5 of a human in the Constitution. Joy, thanks, guys. They were slaveholders. They built a country that was meant to have a slave class, which includes, unfortunately, all of us that work to have a paycheck and that rely on our pension and any kind of system to help us pay our bills each and every day. We are part of the slave class, and it is really difficult to get people to swallow that, unless you come from generational wealth. And I mean to the tune of like Bezos and Gates, Buffett, that kind of money. Johnson and Johnson money, Astor money, Rockefeller money. Unless you come from that kind of money, you're a part of the slave class. It was built that way, and we saw it during COVID. We saw the haves and have-nots. We saw how little we really have. We saw how delicate and precarious all of our positions are in the society, and it was appalling to other people, and then to my friends and me. Folks in the Black community were like, welcome, misery loves company, welcome. Now you get to see what we see. And we were not joyful about that. I don't know anyone that was joyful about that, but it was horrifying, and it was horrifying to see people we know, love, and care for in our workplaces, in our places of worship, and our, the places where we congregate and shop, to see folks really, just like, what in the hell is going on? This is a dystopian nightmare, and it was, and it is. Having said that, like, climate justice, environmental justice makes everything like 10,000 times worse. It is like it is a threat multiplier. It makes everything worse. It really lays bare all of the systemic injustices, and they're just so many. And you think you have a solution for one, and then someone's like, oh, but that doesn't do it. That says, for example, my father and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about, he loves kids. My dad was a substitute teacher at some point in time, and we were talking about COVID and kids, and my child came home and didn't leave, and I was like, oh my God, I am not a teacher. This is not as we say, this is not my ministry. I am not a teacher. I don't know how anyone does this. And I was working a full-time job trying to teach my child kindergarten at that, which is, one of the more tactile ages. It was really, really hard. And my dad and I were talking about how people don't have access to internet. And I live in Baltimore. Many people here do not have internet service in their home. They don't have Wi-Fi. They don't even have good old-fashioned Ethernet. They have nothing coming into their houses. And he was saying, oh gosh, these public libraries need to go ahead and get more and more computers so that the kids can, go to the library and they can have access, so they can take, do their schoolwork. And I'm like, Dad, we are in a doggone pandemic. Are you kidding me? We're going to send poor kids who have no money, kids whose families are struggling, to a public place in the middle of a pandemic to do their homework and to take their classes? Are you joking? Internet should be a utility. It should be something that is, you purchase a home, you move into a home, you get internet turned on, you get your water turned on, you get your lights turned on. It should be a utility, because there should be subsidy for it. So, versus, just a luxury like it has been. Having cable, having internet is a luxury. So we think it is not. It's absolutely necessary for us to, have the kind of society that we look at. So, his heart was in the right place, and it's not, he wasn't wrong in thinking, yeah, I mean, you don't know who has a computer, you don't know who has internet, make more public places accessible, but also like no one should have to leave their house in the middle of a pandemic that's killing people just so that they could take their lessons in school. So you asked one question, and there's another issue staring you in the face, and then you think you're going to solve that, and yet there's another one behind that wall. It is just like the whack-a-mole of systemic oppression. It's horrifying. There are so many things the AHA can do. We have these policy statements and resolutions since 1941. We've got all of these things to stand on, but we cannot do everything, and we cannot do everything well. So some of the things that we can do, in my opinion, is arm you all in your states to lobby on the state level, and train you on how to do that, and then partner you with people who are already doing some of that work. We need to empower you to do more where you are, because even though we do, as the AHA, we lobby on the federal level, we don't do state level. You can do it, and there are people that you can do it with, but how do you do that? And I don't think you all know that, and honestly, I don't know that either. I'm not a policy person. But I think that there, on some level, there are partnerships that we can build to help you all do some of that. And to your point, Stephanie, ratifying the ERA is sitting with states. I think we only need two more states. You're muted.
It's going to be complicated because some of the states that ratified may be withdrawing, and also the meaning of the Equal Rights Amendment has changed quite a bit given our cognizance of an array of sexual identities, if I can call it that.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's also linked to a value structure, and that is that capitalism has been dominating democracies. And, there's such a push to dominate. That's the problem. A lot of white men and other people want to be in control, and they believe it's okay for elites to lead, and to have more, be rewarded more. And the concept of enough and sharing isn't out there. And so we need to be working at the Equal Rights Amendment at the same time that we're working at this broader value structure.
That's really helpful to think about, and thank you for that. I'm going to have to read about how it's changed, and I think to get an understanding of like who may be pulling out and what that could look like for us, because I think this is something we could probably certainly address on some level. But I love the last thing that you said, and that was something, I think another thing that I said at the heads meeting that annoyed people. I like poking some people in the eye. We have to start organizing from a place of abundance and not one from a place of want. And I think that's how we've been existing. I think, and you hit it right on the head. White cis het men have, sorry y'all, have essentially ruined what could be a beautiful world. And it's not just America, it's everywhere. We can see it in Ukraine and Russia. This machismo, this pissing match that's happening for what? It's ridiculous. There is enough, and we know that there's enough. We are in one of the most abundant countries in the entire world. I mean, think of a scene and you'll find it here in the US. Think of a resource, you will likely find it here. There's enough land, there's enough water, there's enough food, there are enough jobs, there's enough housing. We just don't want people to have it. And when I say we, I mean, again, white cis het men don't want people to have it. It doesn't make any sense. And so we have to start organizing from, I know this is going to sound really, really simple, but I think it is simple to some degree. We have to start organizing from a place of love, like where the work we do has to be rooted in love, for other people, for ourselves. seeing ourselves in other people, taking down that wall and leaning into our sense of empathy, and our sense of humanity, and throwing open our doors to some degree, and being okay with being vulnerable in that sense. And that's really difficult, given the fact that most women and most Black and brown people have always had to be in defense mode. I mean, I think that's our natural position when we leave our homes. And unfortunately, many women in their own homes is a position of defense. And it's really, really hard to take that down. Who can you trust? I think we can lean on each other more. And I think one of the most interesting things I saw at the heads meeting was that out of the 17 organizations that were there, 10 of them are either led by or co-led by women. And I pointed it out. I don't think they like that either. That, saying, if you look around, if you want something to get done properly, you put a woman in charge and look around the room. If you want it done with a lens of equity and a sense of justice, you put Black and brown women in those positions. And here I am. And here are some of the other women who are in these leadership positions. Because and I think I really pissed them off when I started and I opened my mouth and I had to explain that I realize I look how I look, but I'm Black. I'm very, very Black. My child is Black. You've seen her jumping around behind me. My brothers, my father, my mother, for generations, we are very Black. We're West Indian. We're from the Caribbean, which is, we joke that we got off the boat first and we've retained a little bit more of our culture than our American cousins. So when I talk about these things, it's because it affects my life directly. It's going to affect my child. It affects me. It affects people I love and I care for each and every day. This is not performative work for me. I'm not here to, spew out talking points because they sound good. It's because it actually matters. And I want to build a life for my daughter and my nieces and my nephews and my cousins and the younger generation, all of the people I love, my neighbors, that will be safe for them. And our world right now is not safe for many of us. I work in DC, the central offices in DC, and going into DC every single day, I'm like, if someone gets a wild burr up their ass and drops a nuke, they're going to drop it right down the street from where I work. I think about these things all the time. I'm like, they're going to go for the White House. I don't think that we are in a safe position as a country. Because we don't treat one another very well. So why would anybody treat us well? It's, the goal of people who don't necessarily like the United States is for us to eat ourselves alive. And we're doing it to some degree. And I think we have got to stop. And I know, like I say, we know that, we are, again, very thoughtful and generous people, but we've got to give people a place to call home, a movement hub, an organizing home, and where they can find some peace and they can find acceptance and they can find safety and we can work together. And again, there are more of us than there are of them. And when I say them, I mean like the far right fundies. There's more of us than there are of them. And we have got to show them that there is more, there is enough, there is more. That again, we have to, from a place of love, show them that there's more than enough to go around. We don't have to act like this. We don't have to act like the world is coming to an end. Or, if you have something, that means that it's taken away from me. It's not that. There's more than enough. And I always say to people, like, if you don't want people looking at in your window at what's on your table, give them a window and give them a table. Like when people have enough of their own, and they're safe and they're fed and clothed and safe and taken care of, and they have some stability, they're not looking at what you're doing. They're busy enjoying themselves too. Everyone should be able to have that. Anybody who desires that, who has put in their time, or whether they're disabled or they're at home raising children or they're working, everybody deserves that. And so we really need to think about like re-envisioning the United States. Capitalism is a failed experiment that has put its boot on nearly everyone's neck. I don't think I can ever retire. And I really seriously mean that. I don't know that I will ever be in a position to retire, at least not young enough that I can actually enjoy my retirement in any meaningful way. And, thankfully, I don't know if it's thankfully, but I had my daughter at, late in life. I was 40, almost 41 when she was born. So it's okay, by the time she's ready to do some things, maybe I'll be able to, step out of work and, help her out and do some interesting things with her. But that shouldn't be the case. And it wasn't the case for many generations before mine. People could retire. My parents were able to retire at 55. And they didn't start saving until I was in college. So, and which was not a very long time. They were able to, own a home and, that was reasonable and, save and do a lot of things that I own a home, but there are a lot of generations, the younger folks can't do that. Even with them saving, precipitously, they cannot afford to purchase homes. Student loan debt, there's a whole lot of things that are just different. But again, saying, just leaning into what you were saying, Stephanie, is that, there's enough. And, we can share and we can create a new economy. And those are some of the things I would like us as humanists to start thinking about and start partnering with other organizations like the New Economy Coalition, for example, that does a lot of that work. They work to envision, like, what are the new economic structures? Are we funding scholarships for people who are, going to get master's degrees and doctorates in economics to think about how we can free ourselves from capitalism and, get into a place where we can provide for people? We know that there are models in the world, and, I'm not trying to act silly. We know that there are Scandinavian countries that do very well, have a really, really good social safety net. They have universal basic income. They have national health service, all of the things that you need to undergird a safe and healthy society. And I would wonder here in the United States, if we were able to provide something like that, what would come of that? I feel like there would be so much innovation because people would be free to create. They would be rested enough to create. You can't create if you're working 2 and 3 jobs, if you're, stressing about how you're going to get daycare for your kid or, elder care for your parents, because we know a lot of people live in multi-generational homes right now. There are a lot of burdens on people. What would it look like if we were able to support one another better? What kind of innovation will come from them? And we've seen it, just with the Industrial Revolution and the tech revolution. We see it now each and every day with, private people shooting rockets into space. It could be really interesting. There could somebody who has, the cure for breast cancer, for example, is probably working at Popeyes or something like that, because they can't get away. They're trying to pay for school. We don't know we don't know what's in people's heads, but we're not creating enough spaciousness for that. And I think it's interesting that people think everyone should work until they die instead of, work and go home and enjoy their family and rest. It's one of the things that I like. I say this from a position where I am adamant about staff resting, that I have made them take 2 hours of flex time each week for themselves, to go to doctor's appointments or to take care of themselves and have a nap or go for a walk or bake a cake, spend time with their pooch or their people, whatever makes them happy. But that to me is a part of productivity. You can't be here and be fully present if your brain is somewhere else or if you have a need that's unmet. And I don't think that we should be creating workplaces that operate in other ways, in different ways. So I'm saying all this because this is how we work within our central office. Their staff salaries have been brought up to actual living wages now. We brought on benefits that support the idea of them having families if they choose to do that, or just being healthy. If they need to get their health in order, there's short-term and long-term disability life insurance in case something happens, flexible spending accounts, which we know can be used for healthcare, dependent care accounts, which, can be used for child or elder care. There are just some basic things that I think, we need to have as a society. And again, we model good behavior. I use my own child as an example. She listens to nothing I say, but she watches and mimics every single thing that I do. And so we have to model that good behavior as the AHA central office, as humanists, as members, and chapter members and affiliates, we have to model that good behavior, and we have to be good partners in the world. And so like that's my deepest hope for all of us in this next year. It's going to take a little bit of time, so I'm asking for your patience. Building partnerships, finding funds. Oh, this is another huge thing too. I'd like to, if you know folks, I'd like to raise between $5 and $10 million to bulk up our social justice fund, so that we can give away money and become a funder. Because there are a lot of amazing organizations who are out here doing really, really great work, and they need funding. They don't need another social media takeover. They don't need their optics raised. They need operating costs so that they can pay their staff, and so that they can buy resources, pay for resources and support for their staff and their volunteers. And that is my deepest hope, is that, when people think, I need X, Y, and Z, oh, go to the humanists. That's what I want. I want us to be like the people that they think of. I would love, I miss church. I would like a community. Go to the humanists. I need to get emergency funding. I've got, someone who's getting ready to be put out on the street. Oh, go to the humanists. There's an emergency fund that you can try to pull from that can help someone. Why can we not be Johnny on the spot? I think we can, or Susan on the spot, or somebody. I think we can do that, and I'd love to see us do that. I'd like to see us resource our chapters and affiliates, so that you can do more. If you there's some chapters that I've spoken with who have food pantries sprinkled around the city, and like a la the little libraries, like in those little wooden houses, and they have non-perishable goods that are in there. A friend of mine who I used to organize with, who's not a chapter and affiliate, but the Newark Water Coalition in Newark, New Jersey, they have a community pantry, and it actually has a refrigerator, and people just put stuff in there, and then it actually has shelves for other non-perishable items. But those kinds of things are really, really important, giving people access to, to healthy food, that folks can just take and have. But maybe you all have other ideas. Maybe there are other things that you'd like. Maybe you'd like to start a tutoring program, and you're going to need school supplies, and then you're going to need to pay for transportation for the kids to get from wherever they're coming from to where you're doing the tutoring, or vice versa. I would like to see us resource our chapters a little bit better also. But also there's 224 chapters, I believe, in affiliates. And unfortunately, that's still not enough hands. So I'd like all of the tendrils. So that would be all of our chapters, all of our affiliates, but then the other organizations. And if we're funding other organizations, we are partnering with them in that work. It's our work too, because we're helping them move the mission forward. So again, I love partnership, but I think partnership for me looks a little bit different. It's not going and asking people to partner with us and helping us do something. How can we help? We have a beautiful, well-made infrastructure as the AHA. And we've got really, really great members and really thoughtful chapters. And I think we need to really leverage what we have better. And that really, again, falls on me. It falls on AHA Central Office to come up with some ideas and create some containers for all of the chapters and affiliates to talk to one another and share ideas and share successes and challenges, so that you guys can do that yourselves without the interference of us. Yes, Stephanie.
Well, we have had such tremendous success in our area with a twice monthly program that we call Science Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And what I liked about what you said, empowering the locals, is sometimes individual chapters come up with real winning programs like that one. And I think to be able to the extent that they are willing, to have that shared wider, developed as a model. And I think that the cooperation between the national or the continental organization and the local is really important. I don't think you want to just have only the locals do it. I think they, deserve to have the backing of the larger organization.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we've talked a little bit about is doing regional case studies, trying new things in the regions, because I think I've learned from living in different places in the country, attitudes are different in different regions. So best to work in regions where people kind of have the same attitude to some degree. But doing case studies, like let's do a project in the Southeast, let's do a project in the Mid-Atlantic, let's do a project in the Northeast, let's do some in the Midwest, the upper Midwest, and then the lower Midwest and Southern Midwest. We don't have a lot of penetration in like the mountain states, like some of the Western Plain states and mountain states. So we've got our work cut out for us because we're trying, we need to get a foothold there because goodness knows they need us. And there are plenty of us who are like, they're afraid to even say that they're atheists or agnostics or humanists or anything else for that matter, or they're just not religious at all. So we need to, help them create some community out there.
The pandemic forcing us to be remote,
Right.
I think may help us include each other more broadly. Hopefully we'll overcome some of the polarization that we're experiencing now between rural and urban.
Right. And I think it could be inspiring too. I think, inviting some other folks to like this meeting, for example. I was talking this weekend, we had our trustees had their board meeting, and I met with one of the trustees, Maha Kamal, who's in Denver. We don't have a humanist, I don't think we have a chapter in Colorado.
We had a chapter. I don't believe there's one that's active there right now.
Right. And so that's what they were saying. And there's a bunch of attorneys who are interested in starting the chapter. And I was like, that's interesting. That's an interesting spin, attorneys, humanist attorneys. I like it. But they're interested in establishing a chapter. And so, I would be more than, interested in talking with them and figuring out what we can do. But like, they could kind of, act as, ground zero, if you will, for like the mountain states. And, if they create their programming, folks can attend there. But while they're trying to figure it out, inviting them to these meetings, like to your meeting and to like, Florida, the Florida Humanists, for example, and other places that are really, really active. Like, this is what it can look like. These are some of the things that you can do. Here are people that, do this kind of, programming. Here are other folks that do this other kind of programming. Make it your own, figure it out, what will work for you. And I think spinning up some of those case studies can be really helpful, and documenting it literally. I mean, like full on case study, like this is what our idea was, this is how we initially thought these things, and we drilled it down to this thing, and this is why, and this is, these are the resources we know we're going to need, and here's who we assigned to do whatever, and literally like an actual real case study, so that we can send it out and say, hey, look, there's been success, like you said, with your Science Sundays. Here is a successful program that Prairie State Humanists has. If you need help finding someone to do this, this is where we were able to find someone to help facilitate that. Or, this is where we find our speakers, or whatever, whatever the external points are that you need to engage to make that kind of program successful. But you all should be sharing those things with one another, and yes, we should be supporting that. So like having staff members in some of those conversations, just so that we are listening and we can hear. But also, I really want to make sure to state very, very clearly, please ask us for help. Like directly say, we really want your help to do blah blah blah. One of the interesting things that I've found as I've been talking with other chapters is they were like, oh yeah, we really could use so-and-so. And I'm like, well, did you tell anyone? And they were like, no, we didn't say anything. We didn't know to ask. And I was like, well, how the heck can we give it to you if you don't ask? So please, like, ask for what you need, what kind of support you want. And we may not necessarily have it readily available, but we can help find it for you. Or we can, we can build a budget for the next year that can help support some of that work. I like fundraising, and I just was on a call a couple of weeks ago, and someone expressed their displeasure because they were not being solicited for greater fund, like donations. And I was like, well, what a problem I have. I know I'm not being asked for enough money. And I'm like, well, I'd be happy to oblige you. Thank you for offering. But that when we know what our goals are, we can fundraise against that, and we can ask specifically, is there anyone who's willing to fund this program? We could probably find an actual one-person donor to fund your thing. Please ask for what you're looking for, and if there are materials that you're looking for. I think what I'm considering is giving each chapter and affiliate like a $200 or $250 stipend. And we find a shop that, you know, we give them the template and okay, go ahead and insert your chapter's name and get your tablecloth, and you'll get table tents and maybe an A-frame and or pop-up banner. I know Howard loves his pop-up banner, and he should.
Howard has his own pop-up banner, and we have a table cover already, so we're covered on that score.
But you're not, because it's not what I'm thinking of, Howard. So again,
I understand.
Brand standards. So we're looking to create an entirely new style guide. We might actually rebrand. I don't know. There's so many possibilities. I think, you know, we're at a really, really nice time where we have a little bit of spaciousness to reinvent and think about who we want to be and how we welcome in and make ourselves like fan out our plumage to make ourselves attractive to the young folk. But more importantly, you know, again, more importantly, giving them an actual real movement home where they're really welcomed. And in teaching all of our current members and chapters and affiliates how to do certain things so that we're not, you know, leaning on the fresh blood coming in to you know, to do the work, which is some of the things I've heard from some of the chapters is like, we had some young people come in and we asked them to do too much and they were like, no, and then they left. And I was like, oh, no, we don't want to do that. We have to, you know, we want you all to learn how to create a TikTok and how to use your social media and, you know, how to use Canva to create memes and your advertisements for your programming. We want to teach you how to do those things. So our staff are getting training and will be training within the next 6 months or so that they can turn around and then offer that training to you all, so that you can run your organizations, you know, a little bit better, you know, with whatever help you need. And again, if you tell me, hey, we don't have a budget and we'd love to learn how to create a budget, well, we can teach you how to do that. But I need to know what your needs are so that we can create trainings for that. Our consultant that we brought on board is amazing and can help us to do quite a bit of that. So yeah, so please, again, open door, open communication. Please tell me what you need. Feel free to reach out to Emily and say, hey, Nadya said. And I will work on getting the thing, whatever the thing is.
Howdy, if I can, I just want to let everybody know, when you were talking about raising salaries and giving benefits to the staff, one of the problems AHA has perennially had is staff retention. And most of it was because we historically have never paid the kind of wages that a lot of nonprofit staff get in the DC area. And one of the, you know, we get people who come in. I mean, we've got people who've been around for years. I mean, don't get me wrong. That, you know, there are people who come in. They're very dedicated to the humanist movement. They're very dedicated to the AHA. But there's a lot of people. We end up being a training center, and there's a lot of really good nonprofits in the DC area and around the country that have extremely good staff members because they trained at the AHA. And now we have the chance to not only hold on to some of our very dedicated employees, but to retain them and look towards building programs in the future. And that's something the board has been very happy to see, is that you know, we're going to be able to hang on to key staff members. Yeah.
And I will say this, and like with great sadness, I've literally been trying to like not slide out of my chair all day. Rachel Deitch, our policy director, will be leaving our organization in 2 weeks. I was like, no, it was horrible. Like, Rachel was almost in tears. Rachel does not necessarily want to go, but the organization that she's going to is where she was educated. It's oh my goodness, I think I can't remember but it has to do. It's an organization that lobbies on behalf of folks that do policy work for STDs and HIV. And that was the education that Rachel got in her master's degree, and she's done that work before. And so I think she was feeling that call to go back to like her roots in a way. But it is super duper bittersweet. So if you know anybody that's open to joining us as a policy director, please send them my way. I've already started looking at other, like we've already started, just kind of generating thoughts about who to talk with, but we're willing to pay some relocation for someone to move to DC. And the salary is right on par with what other policy directors are doing locally. The salary is on par with what's local. We're
When's her
also
last
looking
day?
to, it's the 27th, maybe
Okay.
the 28th, depending on. She's like, if I'm feeling nervous, then it's going to be the 28th. She's so responsible. Thank you, Rachel. Don't leave us in the lurch. She's amazing, and she's not. We're working with her, but I'm really, really happy for her to be going to a place where she will find some joy, some additional joy. I know that she had it with us, and she's really sad to leave. But it wasn't because of the salary. I mean, and that's the one thing. She was like, you did the right thing. That wasn't the problem. But I never begrudge anyone, going to the next thing. Not, we all have a next thing, whatever the next thing is. But yes, absolutely. Raising salaries was really important. They were abysmally low when I started, and I just could not. I couldn't do that. Not if we're an organization that's committed to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. There's no way that we could have continued that. So I'm looking forward to the interview process of finding a new director and a new policy coordinator. We are hoping to hire for a communications director because we need one desperately. And also, I think that we will be leaning into creating a community engagement department, one that works directly with social justice organizations and with our development team. So communications, development, and community engagement kind of are all in the same breath. So I envision there being kind of a nice little creamy layer within the AHA that hits all the sweet spots internally and externally for folks. But we're really proud of the team we've assembled, and we're continuing to build. We just hired a new paralegal. Her name is Stephanie Hansen. So our legal department is back up, staffed up properly. So Monica is still here as our litigator, and then Katie McCarroll is our staff attorney, and now we have Stephanie Hansen as our paralegal. Many of you may not know, Becca Ray is in Colorado, and she is the education program coordinator or associate. I think it might be associate. But she helps to ensure that all of our celebrants and our chaplains are current and their fees are paid, and everyone's current on their trainings. And I think we're really settled, and I think we feel really, really great. And this weekend I saw Roy at the trustees meeting, so it was really, really nice to see him and Maggie, and they're doing well. And we're working well together, so it's a nice, happy family. I'm really sad about Rachel leaving, but yeah, I think we're on the right track with being able to attract and retain talent. I don't think that we're not going to get good candidates because we're right on par. So we're working on the job description, so please do look for that. And if you've got any particular folks that you could recommend, please do for the policy director position.
So you said a couple of things earlier that I'd like to. Oh, there she is. Hi.
Hi.
Great. Stephanie wanted to say hello to you too.
Here, Stephanie wants to say hi to Miss Stephanie.
Hi, Miss Stephanie.
You're muted, Stephanie.
Oh, you're muted, Stephanie.
It's not stopping her.
She was brushing her teeth or eating a lollipop or something else.
It's a lollipop. Yep. I'm that parent at 10 o'clock at night, my kid's eating a lollipop. It's spring break. It's a free for all over here.
Cool. I wanted to ask you about a couple of things. I am delighted to hear anybody and everybody bashing the far right conservatives and fundamentalists, and it's a pox upon our civilization and has been since our founding. the perennial struggle between human rights and the highest of our ideals about all people are created equal. I wish they'd said that instead of all men. So there are many ways that we can continue to improve our society, and I agree with you on that. I'm a little concerned though about it. It seems like maybe it was just you know, you're enthusiastic about your theme, but it seems like you were saying that you know, white cis men are the problem instead of, you know, the fundamentalists, the conservatives, the you know, the people that have tried to hold others back and tried to maintain power over others and behaved in uncharitable ways. So I'm always sensitive. I've learned to be sensitive about what I consider painting with a broad brush. You know, all people of X category are
Mhm.
Y. You know, that's concerning to me.
Right. And I most certainly don't mean to make broad and sweeping generalizations. But one thing I will say is, in having said that, I certainly mean the oligarchy, which is, you know, the people who are really and truly in power and really and truly hold the purse strings
Mm-hmm.
of the country. So who participate in like the Kabbalistic performances that, you know, that really pull the strings that we're all tied to.
Right.
But what I will say also is that we all have privilege that we have to examine, every last one of us, all of us, including me. You know, I come from a country where we were, you know, able to boot out the British, and we were able to determine, you know, have self-determination.
Mm-hmm.
And define ourselves for ourselves. Many people here have not had that luxury. So in that, I recognize that I have privilege. I have privilege as a college educated woman.
Right.
You know, so we all have privilege to examine. And I know that there are a lot of people who do their work. And one thing I will say is that there's a Southern phrase, hit dogs will holler. If it does not apply to you, you should not be yelling. When I, you know, it doesn't, if it does not apply to you, you should not be yelling. And so I realize that may not necessarily sit well with people, but when we are looking at the culprits of who broke or did not break, who established this country on, you know, on shaky footing, it was not people like me. It was not women. They were generally white cis het men.
Yes, absolutely.
To what we know, I mean, they very well could not have been het, but or cis for that matter. We don't know. But saying that to say that, like, the country was established with them in mind, and so when I say that, that's what I mean to say. And so thank you so much for like raising that, because you know, I don't want to necessarily, you know, paint people with no ma'am. I said no. I said no. I don't mean to paint people with a really, really broad brush, but in general, I think there are many people who are struggling who can appreciate that affirmation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so saying that is in that spirit. So
yeah, I
know
just
that
think
meant to be mean spirited.
my opinion is that as humanists, we have a reputation as, deservedly or not, we have a reputation of being analytical and philosophical. And I think for my own part, I try to be careful and precise when I'm expressing myself. And, you know, if we start making generalized statements, we're going to potentially make people think they're enemies when they're not. You know, white heterosexual males are absolutely welcome as humanists, as are Black transsexual women or omnisexual, you know, trans, you know, anybody. One of my phrases that I've used many times is pigmentation and plumbing are not criteria that I consider for anything in any
Yeah.
context,
Absolutely.
except my own personal choice of my romantic partner. And so, I recognize along with you that there are systems in our country that have been built up by people who are self-interested and bigoted and, in some cases fundamentalists and prejudice, and all of the repercussions of those kinds of systems are heinous, and we should all work together to tear them down. But
Mhm.
I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are some great ideals in the founding of our country about democracy, about equality, if only we could live up to it.
Right.
And that leads me to my second question. You said something about people deserve jobs. I think, I happen to be a proponent of the idea of a universal basic income, for example.
Exactly.
And I see that as a component of democratic socialism.
Hmm.
But democratic socialism is not antithetical to capitalism. It just puts limits on what capitalism is able to do, especially in exploitative ways.
Hmm.
So again, I would be cautious about just a blanket condemnation of capitalism, just like a blanket condemnation of people of a particular sexuality or color or
Hmm.
gender.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I will say this, Scott. I think most people who have studied any form of economics understand that capitalism is a part of every single economic system. And so, and to your point, there are plenty of people who don't know anything about economics. So
Right.
saying that can be very misleading. And so I appreciate you helping me put a fine point on that. Um, but I'm saying I'm used to talking with people who like fully understand that there will always be some threat of capitalism through everything.
Mhm.
But it does not need to be the form that we have, which is just unfettered greed.
Yeah,
No checks, no balances, no limits.
absolutely agree.
I do not believe in any way, fashion, or form there should ever be a billionaire. What do you need that much money for? You can't even spend that much money.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. So
Well, you can. Have you seen the yachts?
no, you can't. But Kissy Scott has more money, has given away more money than her ex-husband, and now has more money than she started with, even though she's given away a ton
Wow,
of it.
that's
Because
amazing.
principal and interest. Like
Yeah,
like
right.
it's that's she's just she will never give away as much as she needs. I'd love to get some for love to get some for us. Mackenzie, hey, come over here. And I think Melinda Gates is motivated to do the same. But again,
Yeah,
they'll never give away all their money because they have too much of it. So I don't, I think that they're, yes, people should be able to. I think people should be able to be comfortable. People should be able to innovate and be rewarded for their
mhm,
innovation. But to what degree? How much can you actually spend when roads need paving, when schools need to be built or retrofitted, when
and
people
people
need,
need roofs and food,
yeah,
right?
exactly. People need to eat, they need homes.
Yeah,
At some point in time, you're just stacking money. You're not helping anybody, and it
right,
needs to be helpful. And so
right,
when I say that, it's with that in mind, that it's not, I understand, and most of the people I have organized with very much understand that there's always going to be a component of capitalism.
well,
Um,
back before capitalism became prominent in the 1700s, the whole world operated largely on the idea of mercantilism, that there was one pie and it was all about how big a slice could you scramble for, and cheat everybody else, or do whatever you could to keep everybody else from getting your pie.
mhm.
And in capitalism, the pie grows because everybody contributes some kind of um, productive uh, um, substance to society, whether it's through effort or creativity or helping others. All of us work together, and capitalism, in my opinion, has gotten kind of a bad rap. Unfettered capitalism, absolutely horrid. But capitalism itself is responsible for lifting more people out of poverty than any other economic system in history,
Mhm.
specifically in China and India and here. So anyway, it, all of my points are about being careful
Mhm.
to say something that is accurate. and calls a spade with
Mhm.
regards to the real source of our problems.
I appreciate that, Scott. Thank you for that. And I will be very, very mindful about that in the future as I'm choosing my remarks. But I really appreciate that. Thank you.
No, I love what you said.
No, but you're absolutely right, though. I mean, like, and I certainly am not meaning to, alienate. But like I said, I'm perfectly fine with, being wrong or inaccurate in some way, fashion, or form because I'm human. And I really do take credit, constructive criticism very well. So I really appreciate your correction and your advice. And if anyone else has any for me, I certainly would welcome it. I speak from a very specific perspective. So knowing, and again, working from a different framework, coming from an organizing background with people who have really, really knee deep in, social justice and climate justice organizing. The young folks, and that's what I'm saying, like young folks speak in a very different way. It's usually very direct. And I think everyone understands in that particular niche, being a little bit obtuse is okay.
Yeah.
Being a little bit,
being direct is phenomenal. Being direct and anyway, that's water under the bridge. It's carrying a dead horse. I do want to say that I love almost everything you have said. Otherwise, in fact, everything else you've said about prison reform and the rights of persons to quality of life and participation, and the way that the American Humanist Association can lead. One of the things that I love about the Humanists is that we're compassionate. We're not just about getting rid of God. We're not just about separation of church and state. We're not, there's this context of compassion, and that's one of the reasons that I'm a humanist. And I like what you talk about when you talk about helping people and recognizing the pain in our societies because of our systems.
Thank you. And I do want to raise that there are some people who are about separation of church and state, and that's it. They are about the intellectual pursuit of humanism, the intellectualism, and that's it. They're not interested in being active. They're not interested in living humanism.
Yeah.
There are people in our movement that are that way. And that's fine. I think, there's a place for everyone, certainly. I think there are places for people to do that. I think what I find myself being impatient with is those particular folks wanting to dictate what the rest of us are doing.
Right.
We can't, we can't do that because we're this. Well, not really. This is irrelevant. In our own manifesto, it says that we should be socially active. We should be social activists. Right. It says so in the manifesto. I believe in all of the iterations of it also. This is not something that we can parse apart. And there are people that want to simply argue the point and talk about intellectualism, intellectual humanism, and have these religious debates, and that's perfectly fine. I think
that actually gets back to the differences in some of the prior manifestos. When you get, if you've ever read those or had a chance to look at those, Nadya, Humanist Manifesto 2, for example, calls humanism a naturalistic religion, which, of course, the Manifesto 3 does away with the idea of it being a religion and promotes it more of a philosophy, which, if you have a working philosophy, we can then get into and do the things that we've been trying to do and what you're talking about doing. You work you work from a philosophy of action.
Right. Right, and that's the beauty of it, is that we can grow it. It will continue to change as we as a society continue to change. It will continue to manifest into something totally different, and hopefully not unrecognizable. Hopefully it will become more of ourselves as a movement, as humanists. Will become more of that. I will say that I probably, and I think the way that in the direction that we're going to go there are some people who are going to leave our movement, and I, want you all to know that I'm okay with that. And I hope that you all will be okay with that also, because if we need to, just like your hair, if we have to trim our ends so that it will grow, that's what we'll do. It's okay if some folks don't want to be in the movement any longer, if they think it's not for them. There are plenty of other places that they can organize. It's okay if we do that, because we need to collectively throw our arms open to welcome a new generation of humanists. And that means we may need to make some room. And it's okay if some folks are like, I can't do it anymore. It's okay. And you can tell them that it's okay too, if they're people that you know. And I've said that in meetings, like, if you don't think that this is a place for you, it's okay. There are plenty of other places you can organize. And I send you there with my love and hope that you'll find peace there. But we don't need to, I'm not going to spin my wheels worrying about people who are upset with us about whatever it may be, or who don't feel welcomed. If they don't, then that's on them. And what you said, Scott, is something that I generally very clearly say, which I may not have said. Everyone is welcomed here. Everyone is absolutely welcomed here, where no one is an enemy. If you you really want to lean into that good, if you really want to bring about justice and fairness for everyone, and help everyone achieve their own form of peace, however they define that for themselves, this is a movement for you. It's a place for you. You don't want to be judged. You want to be around people who are a lot of fun. I'm finding that out. Humanists are really, really a lot of fun. Very, very hospitable and kind and funny. This is a place for you. We will have some growing pains we'll have to learn. We will have to learn from the new ones that come in, and they'll have to learn from us. But I believe in intergenerational spaces also, where we have lots and lots to contribute to one another. So I think it's going to be really beautiful. In another year and a half or so, I think we're going to see a different move. And I'm working right now to plant a lot of seeds with, like, Student Secular Alliance, with Camp Quest. I'm meeting with Sarah Miller, the ED of Camp Quest, next week. I'm excited about that conversation. I'm thinking about sending my little one to camp this year. I don't know if that's going to work.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, she's clapping. I don't know that she knows that, like, it means that she won't be able to talk to us for a week. So we'll see how that goes. But we've got to start planting those seeds and cultivating more relationships with our young people. I envision AHA chapters adopting SSA chapters. There are a lot of young people who are still struggling in school, who are struggling for food, clothing, shelter, and being able to make ends meet while they're in school.
That's a great idea.
Studying help. They might just their dorm closed and they don't have a place to go. You would be shocked at how many students in university do not have families to go back to. And when their dorms close, they have nowhere to go. Excuse me, the time has come for child transition. 1 second, please.
Okay.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Scott and I have been doing a lot of the talking. I was just wondering if anybody else has any questions that you want to pose to Nadya.
Well, I just wanted to say I'm so glad to hear her mention the Secular Student Alliance, because I've sat in on a number of their Zoom conferences, and it's so interesting to hear what the young people are talking about and are interested in. And it seems like that'd be almost a natural feeder into the AHA from there, if you can.
Right. And the AHA
those.
actually helps SSA get off the ground years and years ago. I was involved with that. And I've even sat in and helped foster some of the chapters that have sprung up at the colleges around our area. One of the major problems you have, and it isn't just a problem with SSA, you get this with a lot of organizations, you end up with a core of people who are the ones who are doing all the work. The problem when it's a chapter at like an SSA chapter is you're lucky if you have them for 2 or 3 years. Then the real active ones graduate, they move on, and the chapters wither. And I can think of one college, actually North Central in Naperville. we had a hell of a time trying to get their chapter back off the ground after it died, and we got it up for a little while, and I don't think it's doing anything right now. So it's you get that problem a lot with AHA chapters. You get that a lot with chapters for a lot of other organizations, but it seems to be more pronounced when you only have your people who are going to be active for at the most 4 to 6 years. And I know SSA has been working on trying to take care of that problem or foster continuation plans within their individual chapters for some time. It's just the nature of the beast when you're working with student populations.
Yeah, I love what Nadia said about, sort of a buddy program with the Secular Student Alliance groups in our area. I think that's a brilliant idea, and I hope that we can be part of the charter effort to do that, because we've got lots of colleges around the Naperville area, and
Yeah,
including
they,
Wheaton Bible College.
Oh,
Yes. Good
all
luck
right,
with
Lindsay.
that.
yeah, but we burst into flame when we walk onto their campus. I don't know how well that would work.
Yeah.
That's okay. They actually have chapters in middle school. They have high school chapters and middle school
Right.
chapters, SSA.
Right.
I'm so impressed by that. I was like, oh, how can we get one at our school? That they're doing such a wonderful job, and there's just absolutely no reason the AHA should not be more present and prevalent in the work that they're doing. Like, there should be a direct line drawn from what they're doing, understanding like this AHA is like the umbrella that everyone can join at some point in time, and then you go through this progression of SSA, and then Camp Quest during your summers, and then SSA in college, high school, college, and then when you graduate and go do whatever you're going to do, graduate school, professional school, work. When you move where you're moving, there's probably an AHA chapter there. There's probably an affiliate somewhere nearby. Join it, and if there's not, start one. And I think that's like the directive that we can give them, is that you have our support. If you feel like you need to, there's not a community, you want to create one, we'll help you do it. And we need to again, AHA Central Office, we've got to do a better job of like creating. Emily does a wonderful job now, but I think letting everyone know that we will help you do this. You're not on your own doing it. There's a lot of help out there. And we just, we need to create those, again, just being very loud about the fact that there's support for you. We can give it to you. Reach out to us and tell us that you need the help. But most likely there are chapters nearby. So yeah, I would love to see that. And I think talking with Kevin Bowling, the new ED of Secular Student Alliance, I think he's totally on board with that. Figuring out what that can look like. We're going to be giving away a free membership to all SSA members in the next month or so, including the littles if they want it, I guess. But I would love to have them have memberships, and there's reasons for that too. I want to make sure that we're creating youth leadership development opportunities also for them. So hopefully we'll have like youth board members on the AHA board, and on our adjunct boards. It would be wonderful to train them to learn how to be on a board and what that means, so that when they go out in the world, they know how to help steward organizations and corporations and other entities in responsible ways.
Yep. So glad to
Fantastic.
hear you say that.
Oh, it's literally we can, and it's so funny. We do so many amazing things, and if we just do them with a young person nearby, it's mentorship, it's shadowing, it's coaching. What are we doing? We've got to teach. There's mentorship is so important. Howard has heard me say it over and over again in board meetings. I'm like, I need a mentor. But mentorship is really, really important. And it's the key to success in any endeavor, is having someone that you can turn to and ask the really embarrassing questions, and go to for advice and guidance, and have somebody tell you which doors, and open some doors for you, crack them open, and help you get through them. It's so important that we do that. And I think we should just be doing a better job of that as the AHA. So I'm excited. I'm so excited about that stuff, working with the young folks.
And
Awesome.
another thing I wanted to say is I'm so glad that the conference this year will be available through Zoom, because some of us, I can't do the traveling anymore to
Yeah.
go to these. So I'm hoping that in the future they will still be, even if they're, the meetings are in person, that there's some way of tapping into it for those of us who can't get there.
Yes, we
Some
have.
of the other organizations are like, oh yay, we're meeting in person this year, and that's great, but it was too bad because in the past few years we have sat in on those,
Yeah.
and now they're not doing that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
and
that's unfortunate.
interestingly enough, our chapter
There's
is going to has picked up a lot of people that aren't local to Naperville, Illinois,
Mhm.
that attend our meetings, and so we are committed to maintaining an online presence even post-pandemic. And there may
I'm
be
so
other
glad.
chapters. There may be other chapters that need assistance with that. Grants for paying for Zoom. I mean, a
Mhm.
Zoom membership. It's not a trivial
$15 a
cost
month. Yeah, no, it's
to.
not right. The AHA probably will, as far as our discussions have been going, will be hybrid in the future. But I also want to let people know, if you go to the AHA's YouTube channel, a lot of the programs from past conferences. I haven't checked it out lately. I'll be very honest. I'm a derelict when it comes to doing that. But a lot of the programs from the past conferences have been on the YouTube channel. So you could always go back and see something you missed. And my understanding is that going forward, things like programs from like last year's Zoom system and this year's online conference, those will also be archived and viewable and available for people.
Well, and then promote that they're out there so that
We
people
do.
know where to
We
look.
do. We do it. A lot of it's on our website. We do put out the messages via social media. The problem is, you can't force people to, pick up the information and then tweet it out to everybody else.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. But
So it's a matter of, the information, it's like anything else. There's a tremendous amount of information out there on the internet. If you don't know it's there, how do you find it?
mhm.
Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, especially those of you on the East Coast of the United States, where it's getting really late. Thank you so much, Nadia, for being with us tonight, for being so open about your plans, your thoughts, your disposition. It's just really been delightful. I feel more energized now than I have in a long time. Not to disparage anybody, or but no, the energy and the visions that you're bringing to the table are really encouraging. So thank you to everybody who joined us tonight, and keep an eye on the meetup group for Prairie State Humanists for our other upcoming activities. I'm sure we will have a chance to get an update from Nadia again in the future as some of these plans come to fruition. And again, a heartfelt thank you to Nadia for taking the time to join us with your daughter.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here and spend my evening with you. And I'm glad you got to see the little one too. She makes an appearance in every meeting. But thank you all so much. It's been great being here tonight.